Hi everyone. I'm making this video. It's not gonna be a long one. I'm gonna start editing a longer one. I have been working on. I filmed the first part over a month ago, and I hope I can get down to editing it soon. But I'm gonna just do this short video talking about my favorite psychiatrist I found online. I had a post recommended to me on Facebook. So I'm gonna read it. What some of the posts say. Um, Her name is Dr. Jessica Taylor. She's a chartered psychologist. She says pathologizing human trauma as mental illness is genius. The victims are given lifelong labels and medications to internalize their suffering and are told to work on themselves, whilst systems of abuse and power never have to change. And she says, it's imperative that people realize the gameplay. If suffering, trauma, oppression, and abuse is all in our minds, no one has to address or apprehend perpetrators or toxic social systems or cultures. If everyone is suffering from an incurable mental disorder that can only be managed with medications, there is immense profit to be made with each year. If victims of all forms of trauma and violence can be convinced that their problems are inside their minds, they don't rise up or demand any justice. And psychiatry has a history of oppression, of targeting minorities, you know, like, being gay was treated as a mental illness in the past. And yeah, she says learning the history of psychology and psychiatry is absolutely vital to understand why now, 100 years later, we slap labels on everyone and hand them a box of pills but never address or validate the trauma and stress they're going through. You are not going crazy. Your responses are coping. Your responses and coping mechanisms are there for a reason, no matter how much they do your head in. Humans do not develop behavioral emotional responses for no reason. They always have a root somewhere. And I 100% agree with that. That's one of the posts she wrote. It is arguably easier to believe that people living in oppressive, violent, manipulative environments are suffering from mental illnesses, brain chemical imbalances, and genetic predispositions than it is to admit the fact that such a distressing environment would naturally give rise to a range of trauma responses and coping mechanisms which manifest in thousands of ways that have then been deliberately reframed as mental disorders and medicated away to silence victims of harm. And that's what I've experienced all my life. And I've just seen this post of the one that I'm gonna like read from now, and it made me cry tears of joy because I just felt so validated. And it's healing. It's healing to read stuff like that. Someone who you know talks truth. Truth is healing. Healing. Truthful words are healing. Um. Okay. So she says, what if you don't have any mental disorders at all? What if we developed human anti-pathology? What if we developed human anti-pathology, trauma-informed ways of talking about our responses and coping mechanisms? They acknowledge them but do not pathologize them as mental illnesses. What if we what if we actually validate the suffering, abuse, loss, and stress that people have been put through? I love for that to happen, please. What if you're not disordered? What if you never have been? What if your anxiety is actually fear something happening to you again because you have already been through so much? What if your depression is actually your feelings of exhaustion, hopelessness, and helplessness dealing with a situation in your life that never seems to get better? What if your paranoia is actually your mind and body in hypervigilance because you are unconsciously trying to scan for patterns and risks in your life and your environment so you are not hurt again? What if your personality disorder is actually a manifestation of all the trauma, harm, loss, and struggles you have been through that have never been validated? What if your OCD is actually a need for control, safety, predictability, and security because you have been through situations in your life that made you feel very unsafe? What if your postnatal depression is actually weeks of sleep deprivation, an unsupportive partner, birth trauma, the massive impact on your body, and societal pressure to be perfect when you have no idea if you're doing it right? What if your delusions and hallucinations are released feelings and thoughts that have developed as coping mechanisms and trauma responses when you have needed them most? What if they tell a story, reveal a trauma, or have a purpose? What if you were never disordered? What if the trauma, stress, loss, environments, and relationships around you have caused you to develop unique trauma responses and coping mechanisms that were then framed as mental illnesses? So yeah, I may link to a post later, and I'm gonna um read the comment I wrote, and then I'll add, there's another commenter that wrote something that I absolutely loved, and then I'll just talk about some of my experiences. I need safety, I need justice, I need to escape an abusive, invalidating, traumatic environment that asks me to give up who I am and my needs. I do not need treatment or a diagnosis. They try to treat me, they try to change me, is what they were actually trying to do. But they can't change who I am at my core, my needs, desires. I'll never be okay with a life that's not good for me and cannot fulfill me. I cannot be okay with abusing people in situations that harm me. I know for a fact if I get the opportunity to leave this place, and go to a place where I can call home and live a life that reflects me in a more suitable environment, I'll feel great, at peace, more energetic. One of the biggest lies ever told by my gaslighters was that if I can't feel good here, in an abusive environment that caused all those disorders, then I can't feel good anywhere. Here, I can't function, babes, or feel safe. If I manage to get to safety, I'll feel free and able to breathe, okay? There would be something seriously wrong with me if I didn't have the responses I had to the situation I'm in. I'll be an idiot. Thank fuck I'm not okay with what's not okay. And then I'm gonna read the comment from someone that isn't me, but I 100% agree with her. The truth is that there was never anything wrong with me. My environment, the people around me, the absence of a healthy support system, and the adverse experiences throughout childhood all contributed to my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, which were all an attempt to escape a living nightmare. And that's what my circumstances are to me as well, a living nightmare. I refer to them as my personal hell because it's what they are. They are my personal hell. The problem was never me. As I have been literally saying all my life, the problem has always been the country I'm forced to live in. I'm forced to live in a country and culture that do not reflect me. There's nothing for me here. I hate it here so much. I have nothing in common with people here. I don't share their values, and I can't see me living a life here. I've always hated it here. Never felt at home here, and it's not a good place. Everyone here, for example, is anti-choice. It's that they are pro-life, and it's illegal here. Most people here are against it. It's just an ugly place. It's just not a place where I belong at all. But people insist the problem is me, that I just have to be fine with it and live a life here when I could never be happy here. Okay? The problem has never been me. The problem has always been this country, as I've said. And, you know, something that actually helped me feel better, get out of a depressive state, because I may be in a depressing situation, circumstances, but I'm not feeling as down. Listen. My life isn't good, but I'm feeling as good as I can under the circumstances. But for me to actually be doing great and have freedom and live an acceptable life, I'll have to escape this place. Don't get me wrong, but what actually helped me feel better was empowering myself, finding for me spirituality. I'm not saying that's for everyone, but it certainly is for me. I'm very spiritual, not religious. Um, very spiritual. I'm forced to live in a religious country, and I have religious parents, fundamentalist religious parents. So, but I never bought into that. So for the first 20 years of my life, I was like an atheist materialist. I didn't believe in anything spiritual. Then I became spiritual, but not religious, and I'm into the esoteric, the occult, manifestation, stuff like that. And just yeah, I'm an idealist now as opposed to a materialist, and that has empowered me so much. Knowing myself, accepting, loving, knowing myself, empowering myself, knowing that I'm not from this place. This is not who I am. This is not my culture. People here may have tried to force me to be like them, force uh, their identity onto me, but that's not who I am. And knowing that, and I actually acknowledging how bad my life has been, how traumatized, you know, how traumatizing the circumstances are, and that I'm not crazy for not liking them. I'm not crazy for not being happy with this place. I can, like recognizing how abused I've been, you know, how abused, how abusive the circumstances, this country, this environment are, and also my abusive parents, how abused they are, and just knowing myself, um, finding the things that are me, finding the things that I love that have meaning for me, dreaming of a life that I want, finding hope, and knowing that I'm deserving of the life that I want, of getting here, of connecting to the things that I love that don't exist here in this culture. Finding myself that has actually helped me get out of this day. It's not the years of me being a teenager, of them trying to medicate me, of them trying to treat me, of saying, I'll have this forever, I'll be, you know, depressive forever is something that I'll have to manage all my life. No, I'm not happy here. It's because I don't belong here. So yeah, I think I've said all I wanted to say in this video. Thank you so much for listening to me talk, and thank you to Dr. Jessica Taylor for making those posts and making me feel seen, heard, and understood. And yeah, and I'll leave links to some social media and where you can read more about my story. I'll talk a lot about that in the video um, that will release soon. Um, but yeah, you can start reading it and getting an idea of what those traumatic experiences have been, and hopefully, um, if you can, please help me out in some way. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.